afternoon, everybody. Thank you for availing yourself and joining us on the panel today to discuss these topics a bit further, because as we go into this, there's a lot more things that really need to be uncovered. So I was thinking about the maintenance courts, particularly in the ideal world, and if we were prepared for this, I think that if we were digitized like the Home Affairs, for example, if anybody had court matters during this period, they could maybe just SMS the ID number through and the cases would automatically be postponed, instead of this anxiety about what's going to happen with my case, what is happening in all the different courts. Because I think the reality is, for the average maintenance case, they're in all probability going to be cancelled. Somebody want to?
Ayesha, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yes, let me start. So look, even for I have a high court matter that was set down for tomorrow. So just to give you a correlation between the two, I've had difficulty getting through to the court, to confirm. As much as we've received directives and we know that the matters are not going to proceed and it's going to be adjourned in absentia, even myself as a legal practitioner, I can't get through to the courts. So yes, in an ideal world, it would be great if we could have digitized the communication between ourselves and our courts. I know that the Johannesburg High Court has tried to do some sort of digital set downs of trials. I know Farhana, maybe she can give us a bit of information on that. Whether or not that's worked, or how well it's worked, remains to be seen, because of course in so doing we can't just put down procedures without training people. So to say SMS something in, how do we verify that's the person's correct cell phone number? How do we steer away from matters like fraud? There's so much to take into consideration, and to just simplify it and say SMS it in or even call it in is very dangerous. So at this stage I don't see something like that working, especially not within our country. But yeah.
So if I can just come in there. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so if I can just come in there. Caseline management has indeed begun in Johannesburg. We're still not very familiar with the processes. We were going to be given training by the Legal Practice Council within the last 2 weeks. And obviously we've then had to, as a result of of COVID-19, the Practice Council then postponed the training for us. But just taking further what Ayesha has said, I don't believe, and I know definitely not in Johannesburg court, will such a process work currently, because our clerks in the first place don't have the necessary legal knowledge and training of even using a computer, basic computer skills. And most of the time the internet is down. So within the judiciary, they are facing many challenges of their own, which up until today they cannot seem to overcome from a technological perspective. So, in Johannesburg court, given the numbers that we are sitting with on a daily basis, I highly doubt that something of Caseline will work at this stage.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about going forward. Obviously, we can hopefully, like in many different areas in the management of our country, that the flaws now will really be highlighted, that hopefully we can work at correcting. So if we ever faced in this disaster situation again, that we are a little bit more prepared. So, Mohammed, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are with the panel. The problem is government will have to spend money to make this thing work. Like this morning, we tried to, there's a matter in the High Court held tomorrow, we're trying to get hold of the court registrar, the judge on duty, etc. Now the problem is these clerks or these officers are busy with people, busy with complaints, with respondents, etc. And for them now to spend time on the system, on the digital system, deal with that, and at the same time deal with people. It will be very hard for them to do that now at present, but I agree with you 100%, Felicity. going forward, we need to look at this stuff. Maybe the government will have to employ more people or a department or a specific person dealing specifically with this telephonic queries, this email queries, SMS queries, etc. So, but I believe at the end of the day, the wheels will turn faster. Initially, it will be a bit problematic or challenging, but after a few months of implementing it, it will work much better.
Okay, so just let's wrap up the maintenance for now. So people are still asking the question if they should be going to court, and we're still getting the feedback that they're being turned away from courts. So we're still a bit up in the air about whether people should actually go to court for their court dates, because most of them don't appear to be getting through to them telephonically. And as you've all alluded to, the pressure on them at the moment to try and deal with telephonic queries. So if they can't get there, as we said before, in all likelihood, they will just be postponed.
Yes, from what I understand is all matters that are appearing on the roll currently, if the parties are not there, it will just be adjourned. That's the indication that I've been getting from various courts. And I think to what date, or whether it's just going to be adjourned and then the parties are to come and reset down, that remains to be seen. Felicity, I think in this situation, there's going to be a lot that remains to be seen. I've had, I don't mean to jump the gun here, but just to add to this issue of maintenance, I was asked a very interesting question on yesterday, where the non-primary caregiver, so the dad who has access to the children, actually gets to keep the kids for this lockdown period. It was arranged between the parties. They're both quite happy with it. And then dad says to me, do I still need to pay maintenance? Because essentially these children are with me. So should I be paying maintenance? And it may seem fair that you shouldn't, but there's certain variables that cannot be changed. For example, rent is rent. She's not going to get a discount on the rent on a 3-bedroom flat because the kids aren't there. It remains as it is. There's certain expenses that are every month, for, Wi-Fi, Netflix, those kinds of things are every single month. So should dad stop paying maintenance for this month? Again, that remains, it's dependent on so many things. So I think a lot is going to come out of this lockdown, and a lot remains to be seen. I think we're going to have to leave it to deal on a per case basis, and then from there get our guidelines.
Okay, so on that point, I also addressed that yesterday, and my response to it was, we have to see what happens beyond this. But just based on pre-existing conditions, how are we going to hold people accountable? Because random people in random courts are going to be making different decisions about these things. We've seen this, as I say, pre-existing, we've seen it. So if there are things that don't appear to be proper protocol, I suppose we're going to have to wait and find out how these things get addressed as well, because we're going to have these allegations of them being biased and not being thoroughly investigated and just a blanket ruling based on their people's own bias and opinions. For example, oh, well, he looked after the kids, so he's just write the maintenance. We know this happens in our courts. Wrongly, but we know it happens. But I guess we'll have to just manage those kind of queries as well, and possibly have a direct communication where we can channel all of these particular kind of queries through.
If I may just come in here. Johannesburg Court currently, what they've done is they're postponing the matters in absentia, and they've already phoned the parties informing them of the postponed date. So they've been ahead of the legal practitioners. So that's given us some sort of legal relief. Insofar as the point that Ayesha raised, validly so, I believe that obviously some matters with the high acrimony, people don't think very clearly in these times. But I think that parents should then make the necessary adjustments which they deem fit on those necessary expenses. So if your allocation in maintenance court as per the order for that month was, say, 2,000 rand towards groceries or etc., then maybe make half the allocation towards groceries for that month. because all that's going to come out of this would be hundreds of contempt applications, and the courts will definitely then find come to one sort of directive in terms of dealing with all of these contempt applications, and I don't think they have capacity for that. So maybe, you know, attorneys should develop some sort of guidelines.
Yeah, I think also, you know, taking into account that there are a lot of people who've lost their jobs and also going to be losing their jobs. So in terms of non-compliance, there's certainly going to be a rapid spike in those.
And Felicity, on that same issue, on the same issue, the problem we have over here is if the courts are going to find anybody possibly contempt of court, the court will have to look at the specific means at the specific time. So if he really did not have any money, he wasn't working, etc., he couldn't afford to pay that specific child maintenance at the specific month. And I agree also with the directive coming from the chief magistrate. You might say, for example, under these circumstances, let's not deal with it on a case-to-case basis. Let's deal with the situation. If he is non-compliant during the lockdown period, let's have a principle that applies generally to everybody. Yes, correct. Otherwise, we'll have thousands of matters being heard on that specific, only for the month of March, April 2020.
Yeah. Sure, and it's going to block up a already overburdened justice system. Okay, so let's have a look at where we are with co-parenting. What are we day 4? So I don't know if everybody has seen that there was an arrest in Pretoria. They say abduction in the press, but and the details are not quite clear. Well, I haven't really seen the details, but where a father went and forcibly removed a child, and then the child was taken back to the mother. So there's a few things for me. I had a phone call yesterday from a woman the father of her children was standing at her gate and rattling and shouting and saying that he wants to come in and they need to go to his house for lunch because he's actually not paying maintenance. He drops off food parcels. And he's going, you guys now need to come to my house for lunch. And the mother refused to open the gate and refused to let him in. And I mean, he just got more irate. Eventually a security company came past, and then when he heard the police were on the way, he disappeared. So, I mean, I don't know all the details about whether there was a parenting plan or not, but what I'm trying to highlight is there still seems to be so much confusion about whether people can move children, and we've heard that this is very, very clear, but we're starting to get these stories coming out now where people are either deliberately not adhering to the regulations or they just don't know.
Yeah, Felicity, I think there's two sides to this, and I've heard all the sides over the past week. I think you're going to have the cases that land up in the newspaper. You know, the media doesn't always report accurately, and we don't have all the necessary facts before us. It's difficult to make a judgment on a matter that's out there in front of the media. But what I can say is that these are desperate times. You know, if you take into consideration, and I'm really just looking at it from all aspects, when you take into consideration that some people, I'm not saying who or what, but some people will use this situation to their advantage. You know, we got to face that. We're living in matters where there's already domestic violence that's at play, in cases where there's already a difficult relationship between the parents. This is going to be an opportunity to let that go, you know, to let that get out of hand. So to say that, you know, a dad's gone and tried to forcibly remove his child from the premises and now he's been arrested, I can guarantee you that that relationship probably already had some underlying aspects of domestic violence already, right? Having said that, I think we all need to, and on the same point, I've then heard clients come to me and say, okay, but what now? I've allowed this particular parent to keep the child during lockdown, so I will not be having physical access to my child. What are the courts doing to now protect me? How do I get that time back? Am I going to get extra time in the July holidays? Am I going to get extra weekends? We can't just say lockdown, sorry, you don't get physical contact, but you're not giving any recourse as to what happens going forward. And I've had, over the past few days, I've had people be a bit calmer. Okay, we understand understand there's going to be no physical contact during this time, but you know, who's going to monitor the video calls? I had a dad contact me and say, I've tried 3 times over the past 3 days to contact my kids via, you know, video conferencing, and she's just said, sorry, we're not available. And then the next question from that is, how do I get my time back? Because it's important. Spending time with children is important, and we need to be sensitive to that fact. Yeah, I'm not sure what my colleagues think about that, or how we should approach these kinds of situations. I myself don't have all the answers at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think this is a big problem we have, and because of being unprecedented, obviously a mother will come, or father will come saying, I had to have contact with my child during the entire April, March holiday, the Easter weekend. I did not see my child. I had no contact. I couldn't do anything with the child. But the other parent had a wonderful time. They spent time, they spent quality time, etc. And obviously, Ayesha, what we're trying to avoid is we don't have a situation where everybody comes to court, you know, in June and saying, yeah, I want to get my time back. So I think the minister having said that, contact care arrangements are being suspended for now. The child should remain with the one parent, whoever the child's parent is with. There should become regulations afterwards, specifically dealing with how can we deal with that. Because you can't just make a rule and not deal with the consequences of that rule. So I'm with you on that issue.
Yes, 100%.
So I found myself sitting on both sides of the fence in the last few days, where I've had a father who's got a shared primary residence with the mum, who lives less than a kilometer away. And he also wants, obviously he wants to have access or let the daughter come to him in his time, because they share the daughter on a rotational 3-day, 2-day basis. And the mum has now come up and said that the minister's regulations and the directives are clear, and she's not sending the daughter. And my argument, obviously, on behalf of the father is that you have a shared residence. One of the elements of a shared residence is you live in close proximity to each other. So if you need to deliver the child, it's a matter of driving less than 30 seconds to the dad's house, my client's house, and handing over the child. I can't see any difficulty with that. So that's the one scenario I was faced with, and that was my argument. My other argument on the other side was I had a dad who's got interim primary residence, very acrimonious matter. Mom now lives 20 minutes away, and here I'm fighting and arguing the point from an opposite direction, where I'm saying to dad, no, as per the directive, the children stay with you until the end of lockdown, because we don't know at that point now who's been in contact with mom, etc., and you know, all the whatever we've been warned about COVID-19. So it's a difficult one. I don't think there's any clear-cut answers. It's on a case-to-case basis.
Okay, so here's a question for all of you. What does the parent who has primary care or has the children at the time of lockdown, if they have the children and the other parent arrives at their house and insists on taking the child for the specified time, what is that parent's response?
I would say they need to contact the authorities. There's enough directives that's been released that children are not to be moved. We spoke about this at our last conference, where we said that what is in the child's best interest needs to be put first here. And also, we cannot make our own decisions, especially not under the current situation. We have to follow the rules. If we don't, there's going to be mayhem, you know. So the rules are clear. Children not to be moved. And I think if a dad comes in and is starting to be rowdy, or anyone, even if a mum comes to residence and is trying to be rowdy, I believe that the authorities need to be contacted and let them handle the situation as they see fit.
Okay, who is the authority? That's what I'm trying to establish. Who is the authority? Do they phone SAPS? Because they don't know who to phone.
I would say
they phone their lawyer? Do they phone?
No, they should phone SAPS, number one, because that was a directive made by the minister. And at the same time, I agree 100% with Ayesha. The directive is clear. You cannot, move children around. So if a parent comes later on during the lockdown period, after the directive has been given, and saying, I would like to collect my child, he's acting unlawfully. So he's committing a crime in essence. The only possible exception to that would be if the child is super ill and he needs to go to the hospital, and the mother that has primary care over the child doesn't have a car, cannot drive, and now dad has to come now from his place of residence to collect the child, take the child to the doctor, etc. But those are exceptional circumstances. But you're right, Ayesha, and number two, you have to go to the police station.
So there's... I just want to bring this in, and you can address this at this point, because I think it'll be quite pertinent. Because it was the Minister of Social Development said the children stay with the parent who they're with at shutdown or lockdown, and that isn't necessarily the primary parent. And that is where I'm seeing a lot of conflict within this co-parenting thing, because the co-parenting agreement is drawn up that the child stays with the primary parent for a reason. So now suddenly they're not with the primary parent, and it was lockdown, and what is the recourse? Because when the mother's saying, I'm the primary parent, this is where the intimidation and the abuse is starting to escalate.
I
That's
think,
Lenina.
Leslie?
I also just had a question about, so different parenting agreements have different, different agreements laid out. So in terms of, a lot of times included, besides visitation, there are also calls, there are also other things. And I think even though we cannot make our own decisions, this calls for parents to make reasonable decisions to replace what would have been visitation. I think possibly some advice from the legal team is, how can parents mitigate what is reasonable? And I ask that because I often find people don't, when taking their own decisions, or when parents try to relax certain things around the parenting order, and there's lots of different opinions on what is able to be relaxed or not, right? So they might have stipulated, okay, you can have 3 phone calls a week, and one of the parents is fine and they have 5 or 10 phone calls a week, and that's okay. But this does call for parents to sort of relax, and shift the terms of the parenting order. What should parents, what are good ways to find a reasonable, I want to ask a reasonable way to relax these things without being held accountable for it later on when things changed, and how much is attributed to that? How much weight do you think will be attributed to that in court? And I don't know if I'm clear, but often people are, once they go into a courtroom, they're held accountable for every single decision they made. And so how much leeway should we exercise in this?
Okay, I'll quickly answer this question. The problem we have now is, from other times, that where the parent on a normal weekend would be, for example, where the kids will go out to the shops, they go to the movies, they go to the beach, they go to school, to extra classes. The challenge we have now, or the difference here, is the children and the parents are at home 24/7, lockdown completely. So my view on the matter now is there should be an indefinite amount of possible communication between parent and child, in the sense of the mother should have full right to phone the child during lockdown at any time, WhatsApp at any time, Skype at any time, because you're not dealing with normal circumstances over here. The child does, of course, the child must go to bed at a reasonable time, but it won't be school the next day. So in my view, because we're in lockdown now, the child should have more alternative means of contact. And at the same time, because we are in lockdown, it means that the normal contact arrangements aren't taking place. The normal physical contact, it won't take place. It can't take place. It's impossible. Therefore, parents should now inculcate those specific procedures and make use of the various technologies to make sure that the child has more contact than the child would have had otherwise.
Okay, can I just follow on with that? And where there are concerns, would you advise that parents also in this time, and I think this is building on Felicity's question, because we know that there is often abuse. We know sometimes that children are used as pawns. And in circumstances like that, would you recommend that parents record conversations?
Yes.
Or, yeah.
I always recommend parents that has animosity or issues with the other parent, and they foresee problems of happening in the future, to always record, communications, WhatsApp messages, telephone calls, etc. Because it assists afterwards. Obviously, for example, a week ago or just before the lockdown, that's what parents should have done, because if you've never done that and a problem happens afterwards, it will be you said, she said, etc. So I do advise parents to do stuff like that. But obviously, recording every conversation, every telephonic meeting, or every verbal communication might be a bit exhausting. But if things can be in WhatsApp and email, that would be very useful.
Okay. Can I ask Leslie to please just address some of the issues from a domestic violence point of view?
Ayesha, maybe you can assist us. I don't think Leslie's online.
No.
Yeah, I don't see her online either.
Okay.
Sure, Felicity, specifically what about domestic violence you're wanting me? Oh, wait, before, just from Mohammed's point, I wanted to just build on from that, because something that Felicity and I discussed offline, was it yesterday? I've had a few of these now, where the one parent before lockdown has agreed to hand the children over to the other parent, but with very specific, ridiculous, I would say, conditions. For example, I'm going to give the children to you now, and on condition that, I get them for the full July holidays, and I get them for the full December holidays, and I'm going to get unsupervised contact during X, Y, and all of these ridiculous conditions are placed on the parent. And out of fear of not getting their child back with them during the lockdown, I've had a few clients who have gone without contacting me first, and just signed or agreed to these ridiculous conditions. Now, my advice to them has been, we need to be reasonable and understand this is an extremely stressful situation. To ask any parent under these circumstances to say, either you sign this agreement, or I will not hand the child over to you right now. I'm talking about prior lockdown, and those are my conditions. That's a little different. That's duress. That's asking someone to sign under duress. So yes, recording conversations and having things done in writing is preferable, but also the manner in which we're doing it needs to be reasonable. We can't have a whole bunch of parents approaching the other parent and saying, you will sign this and you will do this to me, and if you don't, then these are going to be the repercussions. And that then builds onto the issue of domestic violence and how prevalent it is, especially in
I think we lost Ayesha. Can you go ahead?
I think we lost Ayesha. Does anybody want to add something before we finish off?
No, Felicity, I maybe got one final.
I just wanted to tell you.
Okay, I think we've got problems with Ayesha's connection.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep,
Can you hear me? I just wanted to make one point on what I heard now, is that I had a matter yesterday where because of the acrimony, the parents blocked each other on WhatsApp, the normal story in these relationships. So what the mom made a concession that what she would do is that because the dad would no longer be seeing the child once a week under supervision, he would need to call her for her to enable him to allow the WhatsApp call. So unblock him, and after
We got technology problems. Mohammed?
I just think on a final note over here is this matter is very unprecedented. We never dealt with a situation like this ever before. 3 weeks ago, when the president said We're having the soft type of, isolation taking place. There alone, there were challenges. The Sunday passed where the president said, now we're going for lockdown in 5 days' time. That in itself was totally unprecedented. So I think we're in a position we'll be learning as we're going along. Not only for me and you, but also for the judiciary, the prosecutors, everybody in this game. But I think as we go along, we can communicate, we can discuss, and we can keep our ears on the floor, and we will know how to deal with the matters soon after lockdown.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you everybody for joining us.